Hello. Happy coffee time. We're going to change things up. Well, and I think you'll begin to notice that about me. I do like to change things up because ADHD. I don't stay with the same thing the same way. Anyway, this week, or yesterday, my daughter called. Well, she texted me. She asked me, what did I used to read to her? I'm having a hard time lighting this today. What did I used to read to her? And you know what? I never really read to them story time. I don't think I'm the only parent in the world for whom that has happened, where we just don't have time for stories. I guess we're always working or always dealing with ourselves. I like the lighting setup. I like this. This means I'm going to be reading. If you see this as a thumbnail, it probably means that it's going to be a storybook time. And I would like to read some of the books that inspired me growing up. Especially since I want to go back and take a look into coming up. And the first of these, like I said, don't worry, I don't ever complete anything, right? The first of these that inspired me was a series from John Fitzgerald called The Great Brain. And, well, this is the one that I heard first, the fifth one in the series called The Great Brain Reforms. And it changed me somehow. It stuck in me very much. And I got to thinking, if the author of these books put something to me that helped awaken or spur an awakening path, then maybe I could share the things that have brought me along. And also because I never read to my kids, and I can't read to my grandchild, I can read for my grandchild, and I can read for my kids now. And maybe I'll have a better voice for talking. So, God, I'm kind of nervous. We're not going to have any more to do on that right now. I'm not going to talk too much. I'm just going to open the book. And the title of this video is Doing Grandma Things, Introduction, and the start of a reading. And if I can get by the censors and all that shit, because it's an old writing, if I can do that, then we'll see if I can't try to read the book that I specifically picked out for my grandchild, on her birth. I picked it out to be her story, our story. But and already I'm jumping ahead to what I want to do after this. And I think our teachings talk about staying where we are. Okay. This one's just called The Great Brain. It was the rawest deal a kid ever got from a teacher. I couldn't wait for school to let out so I could tell Papa and Uncle Mark. Finally, the school day was over, and I walked home with my brother. "When we tell Papa and that Mr. Standish paddled you for nothing," I said, "he'll write an editorial and get the new teacher fired, and then we'll tell Uncle Mark, and he'll arrest Mr. Standish and put the new teacher in jail. There must be some kind of law against a teacher paddling a kid for nothing." "We aren't going to tell Papa or Uncle Mark or anybody," Tom said to my surprise. "I can take care of myself. Mr. Standish will rue the day he paddled me, because I wouldn't be a tattletale." My brother sounded like a prophet of doom. I felt a chill come over me. "What are you going to do?" I asked breathlessly. "I'm going to put my great brain to work on getting rid of Mr. Standish," Tom answered. I love this kid. Alright, let's find it. Alright, chapter 1, and we don't know how far we're going to go. The print is pretty big, and we're just going to take our time. The Magic Water Closet. Oh, I forgot the background story. The reason why the books meant something to me. A teacher in 6th grade read them out. Read a couple of these out to me. And I enjoyed that time a lot. It was right after lunch. Anyway, ready? Still scatterbrained. Most everyone in Utah remembers 1896 as the year the territory became a state. But in Aidenville, it was celebrated by all the kids in town and by Papa and Mama as the time of the Great Brains Reformation. I was 7 years old going on 8. Tom was 10, and my brother, Swain, was soon to be 12. We were all born and raised in Aidenville, which was a typical Utah town with big wide streets lined with trees that had been planted by early Mormon pioneers. Aidenville had a population of 2,500 people, of which about 2,000 were Mormons, and the rest Catholics and Protestants. Mormons and non-Mormons had learned to live together with some degree of tolerance and understanding by that time, but tolerance hadn't come easy for my oldest brother Swin, my brother Tom, and myself. Most of our playmates were Mormon kids, but we taught them tolerance, and it was just a question of us all learning how to fight good enough for Swin to whip every Mormon kid his age, Tom to whip every Mormon kid his age, and me to whip every Mormon kid my age in town. After all, there is nothing as tolerant and understanding as a kid you can whip. We never had any really cold wind weather or snow in Aidenville because it was situated in the southwestern part of Utah, known to the Mormons as Dixie due to its mild climate. This was fortunate since we didn't have indoor toilets then. Everybody in town, from Calvin Whitlock the banker down, had to use the back house until the water closet Papa ordered arrived from Sears Roebuck. I'm having a hard time reading. We called them back houses and not outhouses, because in Utah an outhouse was a sort of a tool shed and storage room. Back houses ran from 2-holers to 6-holers. Ours was a standard 4-holer. You could just about judge a family's situation in life by their back house, just by looking at the Whitlock back house with its ornate scroll woodwork trim and its fancy vent. You knew Calvin Whitlock was a person of means and influence in the community. If there was one man in all of Aidenville who would order the first water closet ever seen in town, that man had to be Papa. I thought Papa was the greatest man in the world, except for one weakness. Papa just couldn't resist ordering any new invention that he saw advertised in magazines or catalogs. Our big attic was filled with crazy inventions that didn't work. Papa was always threatening to write the presidents of these companies and denounce them as swindlers, but he never did. I guess he was afraid they would write back and call him a fool for believing what they said in their advertisements. Papa was an editor and publisher of the Aidenville Weekly Advocate. You would think a man smart enough to be an editor and a publisher would be smart enough to not let himself be swindled. But Papa kept right on ordering new inventions. It was no surprise to anybody in town when they learned that Papa had ordered the first water closet most people had ever seen. The first Tom and I knew of it was the morning that Fred Harvey walked into our backyard with a pick and a shovel on his shoulder, and he was the only plumber in town. He was a middle-aged man with a face that looked as if he had just taken a bite out of a sour pickle. He was known as a very cranky person who didn't like kids. Mama said the reason Mr. Harvey didn't like kids was because he had never had to put up with any of his own. It didn't quite sound right to me, but that's what Mama said. Excuse me. When Mr. Harvey came to our backyard, Tom and I were on our big back porch, which ran the width of our house. We were beating with sticks on Mama's washtubs, pretending that we were drummers in a band. Tom had a grin on his freckled face as he banged away. He was the only one in our family who had freckles. Tom didn't look like Papa, and he didn't look like Mama, unless you put them together. Then you could see that his hair was a cross between Papa's dark hair and Mama's blonde hair, and that he and Papa's nose and mouth and Mama's stubborn chin, where the freckles came from was a mystery. I took after Papa and had curly black hair and dark eyes. My other brother, Swin, he took after the Danish grandfather for whom he was named, and had blonde hair and a stubborn Danish chin. Tom and I heard the clanking sound of the pick and shovel being dropped to the ground by Mr. Harvey over the sound of our beating on the washtubs. We stopped and turned around to watch. Mr. Harvey pulled a bandana handkerchief from his overalls pocket and blew his nose loudly. Then he looked to us as if resenting us for being on our own back porch. "Why aren't you kids in school?" he demanded. "Because there isn't any school today," Tom said, glaring right back at Mr. Harvey. "And there might not be any school for a whole week." "And why not?" Mr. Harvey asked. "Because Miss Thatcher is sick," Tom answered. Mr. Harvey certainly knew that Mrs. Thatcher taught 1st through 6th grades in our one-room schoolhouse. He also knew that when she was sick there wasn't any school for any kid in town. I guess this kind of upset him. "If I'd have known that," he'd said as if angry, "I wouldn't have taken this job." Tom and I watched Mr. Harvey start to dig a hole in our backyard. "What is he doing?" I asked, just curious as I could be. "Well, let's find out," Tom said. We left the porch and approached Mr. Harvey. "Why are you digging a hole?" Tom asked, polite as all get out. "To bury nosy little boys in," Mr. Harvey said gruffly. "Now get away from me and leave me to my work." "Come on, J.D., Tom said, heading back for the porch. "We'll ask Mama." My brothers and I always called each other by our initials because that was the way Papa addressed us. We all had the same middle initial because we all had the same middle name of Dennis, just like Papa. More than 200 years before I was born, an ancestor of ours named Dennis betrayed 6 of his cousins to the English during the rebellion in the Meath, Ireland. His father decreed that all male Fitzgeralds must bear the middle name of Dennis to remind them of the cowardice of his son. I followed Tom into our big kitchen, with its 10-foot wide, coal-burning range. Mama was kneading dough on the big kitchen table as we entered. I had never seen Mama's hands idle. They were always busy. Hands sewing, mending, cooking, washing, knitting, and always moving. Mama's blonde hair was piled high in braids on her head. The sunshine coming through the kitchen window and striking Mama's head made her hair look like golden sunlight. She looked at us and smiled. "What have you two boys on your mind?" she asked. "Why is Mr. Harvey digging a hole in our backyard?" Tom asked. "It's the cesspool for the water closet your father ordered from Sears Roebuck," Mom answered. Aunt Bertha, who had lived with us since the death of her husband, was greasing a bread pan with bacon rinds. She wasn't really our aunt, but we called her Aunt Bertha because she was just like one of the family. "This water closet business is the most foolish thing your husband ever did," she said to Mama. When Aunt Bertha criticized Papa, he was always Mama's husband. When Papa did something Aunt Bertha approved of, he became that man of ours. She was a big woman, with hands and feet like a man's, and gray hair. She always wore in a bun at the nape of her neck. Tom scratched his freckled nose as wrinkles appeared upon his high forehead. "You put china in a china closet," he said slowly. "You put clothes in a clothes closet. You put linen in a linen closet. But how can you put water in a water closet?" I was dumbfounded. It was the first time in my life I'd ever heard my brother, even with his great brain, admit he didn't know everything. Every year, when Papa renewed his subscription to the New York World, they sent him the World Almanac. While Swin and I read books like Black Beauty and Huckleberry Finn, Tom read the World Almanac and the set of encyclopedias in our bookcase. Tom said his great brain had to know everything. A water closet is a toilet you have inside your house, Mama explained. That's why your father had Mr. Jameson partition off that room in the bathroom. I guess they had bathrooms back in the day? Or was this a editor's mistake? I don't know. Hold on, please. The hole Mr. Harvey is digging is the cesspool for the new water closet. But Mama, I protest, thinking about the odor coming from our back house, especially on hot days. It'll stink up the whole house. Bertha agreed with me. I tell you, Tina, she said to Mama, this is going to make us all the laughingstock of Aidenville. No, Bertha, Mama said with a soft rebuke. I've seen water closets in hotels in Salt Lake City and in Denver while on my honeymoon. I assure you they are very convenient and sanitary. I remember how I couldn't even believe you could get water without a pump until they built it at Aidenville Reservoir, and Papa had explained how the reservoir being on higher ground forced the water through pipes. And then Mr. Harvey had installed our hot water heater, and we got hot water right out of our tap. I thought it was a miracle. But a back house in our bathroom was beyond my wildest imagination. I was positive that Papa had been swindled again on another crazy invention. Tom and I went back outside to the porch. We watched as Mr. Harvey continued to dig the cesspool. In a little while, Sammy Leeds, Danny Forrester, and Andy Morrison came into our backyard. Mr. Harvey chased them away and told them to stay out of the backyard while he was working. Tom and I sat on the porch watching until lunchtime. Papa came home for lunch with Swin, who had been helping at the newspaper office. Mr. Harvey came to our back door. He demanded that Papa keep all the kids out of the backyard while he was working. Papa told Swin to remain home and to see to it that was done. Can we watch from the back porch? Tom asked. Yes, Papa agreed, but stay out of the yard. I could tell from the conniving look on Tom's face during lunch that his great brain was working on like 60 to turn this to his financial advantage. He disappeared right after lunch, and I went out to the back porch with Swin. Mr. Harvey had just finished eating his own lunch which he had brought in a shoebox. He went to the hydrant and got a drink of water and then went back to work. Mama had asked him to have lunch with us, but Mr. Harvey had refused. Sven and I sat on the railing of the back porch watching. Think you'll have any fights keeping the kids out of the backyard? I asked hopefully. There's nobody to fight left, Sven said, as if he regretted it. Maybe when Papa and Mama send you to Salt Lake City to school next fall, you'll find some kids there to fight, I said, wanting to cheer him up. He shook his head sadly. It's a Catholic academy, J.D., and I don't believe the sisters or priests who teach there will allow any fighting. I thought ahead to the time I would be graduating from 6th grade in Aidenville like Sven would in June of that year. I too would be sent to the school in Salt Lake City, and the thought scared me and made my mouth dry. I went to the kitchen to get a drink of water, just as the door leading to our side porch was thrust open. I stared, bug-eyed, as I watched Tom come through the hallway that separated our kitchen and dining room, followed by 10 kids. Is it all right, Mama? Tom said, as if he led the 10 kids into our kitchen every day. Papa ordered Swin to keep the kids out of the backyard while Mr. Harvey is digging, but Papa said it was all right to watch from the back porch. We can't get to the back porch without going into the backyard unless we go through the kitchen. Aunt Bertha shook her head. I tell you, Tina, that boy can talk his way around anything. He gets it from his father, Mama said, as if she was proud of Tom instead of angry with him for marching 10 kids across the clean kitchen floor. I couldn't believe my eyes as I watched Mama go into the pantry and return with a big crock jar full of cookies. She stationed herself near the door leading to the back porch. "All right, boys," she said, smiling. "Help yourselves to an oatmeal cookie as you pass by." I had to fall in line to get one of my own mother's cookies. Tom was munching on his cookie as I joined him on the back porch. "You know, J.D.," he said as he finished the last bite of his cookie and folded his arms on his chest, "there's room for at least 10 more kids on this back porch. I'm going to give you the opportunity to share in this business venture of mine." "Business venture?" I asked, not knowing what he meant. "What business adventure?" "You didn't think I let all these kids see the digging of the first cesspool in Aidenville for nothing, do you?" he asked as if I insulted him. "I charged them a penny apiece. You go round up 10 more kids. Tell them they not only get to see the digging of the first cesspool for a water closet for a penny, but that they will also be served refreshments. Collect the money in advance, no credit, no promises. Or promises." "Now how do you know Mama will give them a cookie?" I asked. "She has to," Tom said confidently, "because she gave all the other kids a cookie." "And what do I get out of it?" I asked. I knew from past experience that it always pays to spell out the terms when making a business deal with my brother. "I'll pay you a commission of 1 penny for each 5 kids," Tom answered. "If you round up 10 more kids, you'll make 2 cents. "Hey, fuck, that's a lie. 1 for each 5, that's 2 cents per. 10 more kids is 2 more cents. Oh, okay. Checking his math. How proud I was. A half hour later, as I marched 10 kids into our kitchen and told them to line up to receive one of Mama's delicious oatmeal cookies. Mama's attitude puzzled me. She didn't look pleased and proud as she had with Tom. I caught her giving me a funny look, and she held the cookie jar, and each kid helped himself to a cookie. I was at the end of the line and all set to have another cookie, but Mama slapped the lid back on the jar. "You had a cookie, John D.," she said. "Please inform Tom D. that the cookie jar is empty. I wasn't prepared to serve a cookie to every boy in town." I thought Mr. Harvey would be mad as we all got out. I thought Mr. Harvey would be mad as all get out at having 20 kids watching him. But as the afternoon wore on, he seemed to like playing to an audience, especially when he hit a big rock which he had to lift out of the hole. It was a heavy rock for one man to lift, and all the kids applauded. Mr. Harvey looked at us and appeared to almost, but not quite, smile. When Mr. Harvey quit work that day, he told Mama to tell Papa that it would take 2 more days to finish the cesspool. "Did you hear that, J.D.?" Tom said, rubbing his hands together. "I knew my great brain would make me a fortune someday. 20 kids tomorrow, 20 more the next day. That adds up to 40 cents. "How about me?" I asked, not wanting to be frozen out of his financial bonanza. "I'm sorry, J.D.," he said, patting my shoulder, "but you know what Mama said about the cookie jar. That means I'll have to buy some ginger snaps for myself to serve as refreshments." The next morning, I went with Tom to Zion's Cooperative Mercantile Institution, which was the name given to stores all over Utah which were owned by the Mormon Church. There was one in every town, and you could buy anything from a penny stick of licorice to a plow and a harrow and harrow in them. What does harrow in mean? And harrow in them. Most people simply called them the SCMI, or the ZCMI, although some Mormons did call them the co-op. Tom bought a 5-cent box of ginger snaps, which contained 20 cookies. Mr. Harvey played to a full house for the next 2 days. He finished digging the hole, which was over 10 feet deep and about 10 feet across, and a trench 2 feet deep and about 1.5 feet wide that ran from the hole right under our house where the bathroom was located. Then he bought brought a wagon load of cedar posts which he had used to line the sides of the cesspool, timed them together with baling wire. He also brought a clay pipe which he laid in the trench and filled it to the joints with mortar. Then he covered the cesspool with the cedar posts and boards, over which he had put 2 feet of dirt. He filled the trench with dirt, covering up the clay pipes just as the day's work finished. Mama must have felt a little guilty about not serving the kids cookies for those 2 days, because she made lemonade for all the kids both days. Tom, of course, took all of the credit, saying the lemonade was included in the price of admission. His great brain had made him a fortune in 3 days. The failure of the new inventions Papa ordered was always made... I'm sorry. I guess I'm getting tired. Ooh. I'm not used to reading out loud. Holy cow. Holy cow. Mr. Man. How much long is that first chapter? Oh, I'm not... No, it's chapter 2. Alright, chapter 2. Oh, wow, it's 24 pages long. Alright. I bet the baby's asleep by now. Okay. Intermission. I can't believe this weekend's almost over. Oh yeah. Yeah, in real life, when grannies read stories, it's probably not going to be an experience of perfection. It's going to be a flawed experience because I'm representing real time. So, what I wouldn't give to hold my child, my grandchild. I wished I read to them. I didn't have any patience. They didn't have an attention span. At least this way, you could pause it. You could fast forward. You could do whatever you want. But the real-time experience is there. It's recorded. You gotta love modern technology. You gotta love it. Alright. And again. The failure of the new inventions Papa ordered was always made all the more embarrassing because he bragged about them in advance. The water closet was no exception. Everybody in town knew about it long before it arrived. Nels Larson was station master, ticket agent, telegrapher, express agent, and freight agent at the railroad depot. He never delivered any express or freight except the things Papa ordered. Mr. Larson would simply telephone people and tell them they had an express or freight shipments at the depot and to come get them. But his curiosity always got the best of him when anything came from Papa. When the water closet arrived, he went home and got his own team and wagon to make the delivery. He told his wife the water closet had come. Mrs. Larson got right on the telephone to spread the news all over town. By the time Mr. Larson had returned to the depot and loaded the crates containing the water closet, his wife let everybody know that today was the day. Mr. Larson was a middle-aged man with blonde hair and a light complexion stemming from his Swedish heritage. He always walked leaning forward as if walking into a strong wind, and rode on the seat of his wagon the same way. He drove the team from the depot right down Main Street, with the people leaving their places of businesses and homes to follow him. When he stopped in front of our house, there were about 200 men, women, and children in the street. Mama took one look out the bay window in the parlor and telephoned Papa that the advocate office, Mr. Larson, was poised over a wooden crate with a hammer in his hand right in the middle of Main Street when Pa arrived. Sorry, I screwed up and skipped a period. there. "What in the name of Jupiter do you think you're doing?" Papa demanded. Make the delivery in the rear." "Nothing in the rules," Fritz says. "What?" "I gotta make deliveries in the rear." "Oh, nothing in the rules, Fritz says I gotta make deliveries in the rear," Mr. Larson said. "You don't have to open the crates right in the middle of Main Street," Pa said. "Rules and regulations say I've got to inspect the merchandise for damage," Mr. Larson said. "You know very well, Nels," Pa said testily. "The only time you ever inspect anything is when the shipment is for me." "Ain't nothing interesting in the others," Mr. Nelson said. "You listen to me, Nels," Pa said, his dark eyes flaming with anger. "I will not permit you to make a spectacle of my water closet in the middle of Main Street." "And you listen to me, Fitz," Mr. Larson said, pointing his hammer at Papa. "It is my job to inspect the merchandise for damage, and that is just what I intend to do. Don't want you blaming the railroad or the express company because this crazy contraption doesn't work." "And what makes you so certain it won't work?" Pa asked, glaring at the station master. "None of those newfangled inventions you ordered works," Mr. Larson answered, putting Papa in his place. "Go ahead and open it," Pa said in complete defeat. The first crate Mr. Larson opened contained the copper-lined water tank, which he placed on expedition on top of the crate. He stepped back and eyed it critically. "Can't figure out what that is for," he said. "Are you satisfied it isn't damaged?" Pa said, as if trying to control his temper. "If so, I assure you that Mr. Harvey and I will know what it's for." Papa then folded his arms across his chest like a martyr. "And since you're bound and determined to hold a public unveiling of my water closet in the middle of Main Street, please get on with it." "No reason to get sore," Mr. Larson said indignantly. Just because I'm a man doing his job according to the rules and regulations." The next crate contained a big brass pipe, which we later learned connected the water tank near the ceiling to the bowl on the floor. Mr. Larson held it up as if it were a spyglass. "You've been swindled again," he said to Papa as he laid the pipe down. Papa was positively fuming as Mr. Larson opened the next crate, which contained a porcelain bowl. Mr. Larson placed it like a trophy on top of the crate for all to see. "It's beginning to make sense," Mr. Larson had to admit. "But that bowl is plumb too big for the kids." "Just determine if it is damaged and get on with it," Pa said, so angry he turned his back on Mr. Larson. It wasn't until the station manager removed the wooden toilet seat that his skepticism began to vanish. He held it in front of his face as if it were a picture frame, as he slowly turned around for all to see. "And this is the thingamabob you sit on?" he shouted as if making a great discovery. There were so many oohs and ahs from the crowd who were so used to sitting on boards with holes cut in them. Papa then sent me to fetch Mr. Harvey. I thought from the way Papa's jaws were puffed up he would explode before I returned with the plumber, but he didn't. Mr. Harvey and I arrived just as the public unveiling of our water closet on Main Street came to a close. Mr. Harvey pushed Mr. Larson to one side and began searching through the crates until he found a big brown envelope containing the instructions for assembling the water closet. Then his and Papa's troubles began. Every man, woman, and child who could get their hands on any part of the water closet as it was being carried into our bathroom thought their help entitled them to remain and watch it be assembled. "Make everybody clear out of here," Mr. Harvey said to Papa as he plunked his tool case down on the bathroom floor. "Can't do a bloomin' thing with all these people hanging around here." Papa asked everyone to leave. Nobody budged an inch until Papa promised that they could all see the water closet and how it worked after it was assembled. He made Swin and Tom and me leave. The crowd broke up into small groups in our backyard and on our front lawn. They spoke in hushed whispers as people do at funerals. I wandered from group to group listening. The more I listened, the more humiliated I became. "Wouldn't want one of those things in my house," I heard Dave Teller, the shoemaker, telling a small group. "It's bound to stink up the whole house." "Not only the house," Mr. Carter, who worked at the cemetery, said, "but the whole neighborhood. If that cesspool caves in during a rainstorm." My friend Howard K. didn't help matters when he sidled up to me as if ashamed, sidled. He sidled? Sidled? This is a new word. SIDLED. Up to me as if ashamed of being seen with me. And my context clues aren't helping. Slighted? But there's no L there. Ooh, vocabulary word. Or a sly kind of movement. "Gosh, Josh," he whispered. "Folks are saying your pa's gone plumb loco putting a back house in your bathroom." He put his fingers to his nose. "Phew, I hate to be living in your home." Well, that was too much for me. I held back tears of humiliation until I ran upstairs to the room I shared with Tom and flung myself on the bed and began to cry. I had always been proud of Papa, in spite of him buying crazy inventions that didn't work. But this time he'd gone too far. He hadn't done what Aunt Bertha said he would do. He made us, Fitzgeralds, the laughingstock of Aidenville. Nobody will come to our house anymore. How could Mama entertain the ladies' sewing circle in a house that smelled like a back house? It would be the same as entertaining in our back house. I visualized callers at our house stopping at the front gate and putting clothespins on their nose before entering the house. I don't know how long I lay there crying with shame before I heard a terrifying clanging and banging as if somebody had dropped a lot of pans and kettles off our roof. I dropped to my knees. I was positive the water closet had exploded. "Please, God, spare my Papa," I prayed. Then I ran downstairs. I expected Mama to be hysterical with grief and Papa and Mr. Harvey blown to kingdom come. Instead, I found Mama and Aunt Bertha in the kitchen making platters full of sandwiches. I ran into the bathroom. Papa and Mr. Harvey were standing, looking at the installed water closet with smug expressions on their face. The porcelain bowl was bolted to the floor in one corner of the room and had been partitioned off. The wooden seat had been attached to it. The water tank was fastened to the wall near the ceiling, with a water pipe running up to it. The big brass pipe was connected to the water tank and the bowl, and there was a brass chain attached to the water tank with a wooden handle on it. "One more time to make sure," Pop said to Mr. Harvey. I watched Mr. Harvey pull the chain, and there was a clanging sound, and then water rushed down the brass pipe from the water tank into the porcelain bowl, filling it up, and then suddenly the water in the bowl disappeared. "She's ready and raring to go," Mr. Harvey said, and for the first time in my life I saw him smile. It was surely a miracle invention, but there was one thing I had to know. "Will it stink?" I asked. "No, J.D.," Pa answered. "The water level in the bowl will keep any air or odor from coming in up from the cesspool." I was so happy that I felt like doing a jig as I followed Papa into the back porch. I watched Papa clasp his hands behind his back and teeter on his heels. "Ladies and gentlemen," Papa announced to the crowd, "I'm pleased to report that Mr. Harvey and I have successfully installed the first water closet in Aidenville. You will be admitted in small groups of not more than 6 at a time. Mr. Harvey will explain the mechanism of the water closet and how it works, and he will also give each group a demonstration. As you leave, please pass through the kitchen where Mrs. Fitzgerald will serve a refreshment." I was lucky that I'd seen the water closet, because none of the kids had got a chance to see it. Grown-ups pushed the kids aside, including Tom and Swin. And by the time all the grown-ups had seen the water closet, it was supper time. A howl of protest went up from the kids, but the parents made them go home. My brother Tom must have immediately put his great brain to work on how to capitalize on this, because the next morning he told me to follow him into the barn. "Run down to the ZCMI store and get me a cardboard box," he said as we entered the barn. I'll need a piece of cardboard to make a sign. I was curious as all get out when I returned with a cardboard box that had contained cans of condensed milk. I watched, fascinated, as Tom used his jackknife to cut out one side of the box, and then he laid a piece of the cardboard on the bale of hay and took out a package of crayons he had in his pocket. My admiration for him and his great brain turned to complete awe as I read the sign he printed on the piece of cardboard. See the magic water closet that doesn't stink. Admission, 1 penny cash, no promises or credit. Tom then picked up the stick. After punching 2 holes into the piece of cardboard, he tied the sign to the stick with twine. Now, J.D., he said, I want to hire you to be a barker and make a pitch for my new business venture. Barker? I asked, not knowing what the word meant. And what's a pitch? Remember last summer when Colonel Schaefer's medicine show came into town? Tom asked. I nodded. Remember how Colonel Schaefer stood there on the tailgate of his medicine show wagon with the Indian he had beating the tom-tom, and the Colonel was making a speech? Well, I asked the Colonel about it, and he told me that to attract a crowd, you have to have a barker and make a pitch. I want you to be the barker and make a pitch to attract crowds of kids for my new business venture. And what's in it for me? I asked. I'll give you 10% of the gross receipts, he answered. What are gross receipts? I asked. All the money we take in, Tom answered. You get 1 penny for every 10 pennies I collect. It's a deal, I said gratefully. Tom handed me the sign. Then he walked over and picked up the cowbell that we put on our milk cow when we let her out to pasture. He handed the cowbell to me. We don't have a tom-tom like Colonel Schaefer's Indian did. We'll use a cowbell instead. His freckled face became solemn. Sometimes my great brain almost scares me, he said. I'll be a millionaire before I'm old enough to vote. Then his face broke into a grin. Off you go, J.D. Ring the bell and make your pitch on Main Street in front of our house. I took up my station as a barker in front of our house. I rang the cowbell and made my pitch. See the magic water closet that doesn't stink, I shouted as I rang the cowbell. Only 1 penny to see the magic water closet. Colonel Schaefer was right. All you needed was a barker to make a pitch to attract a crowd. Kids come running from every part of town. I soon had kids lined up all the way from our front porch gate around the side of the house to our back porch, where Tom was busily collecting a penny from each kid to see the water closet. My brother and I were on the verge of making a financial killing when I saw Mama coming down Main Street. I knew she had gone to spend the morning with Mrs. Tyler, who was ill. Here she was coming home, and it wasn't even 10 o'clock. I gave her a big smile as I rang the cowbell and made my pitch. See the magic water closet that doesn't stink, I shouted. Only 1 penny to see the magic water closet. John Dennis, come with me, Mama said sharply. I knew she was angry about something when she called me by my full name. She never called us boys by our full names unless she was angry with us. I followed her around the side of the house to the back porch. Tom flashed us both a triumphant grin as he collected pennies from kids before admitting them into the bathroom. Tom Dennis, come to the kitchen, she said sternly. One thing I loved about Mama. When she was angry with us, she never scolded us in front of other kids. Tom and I followed her into the kitchen. Aunt Bertha identified herself as the tattletale excuse me, as we entered the kitchen. I thought it best to telephone you, Tina, she said. And it's a good thing you did, Mama said, placing her hands on her hips. Calling Tom and me by our full names was bad enough, but I knew Mama was just as angry as she could be when she placed her both hands on her hips. Tom Dennis and John Dennis, I am thoroughly ashamed of you both, she said. Excuse me. Whew. You should only be 10% ashamed of me, I defended myself. I'm just a barker and only get 10% of the gross receipts. To take part in anything that is wrong, even 1%, Mama reprimanded. It's just as bad as 100%. Tom folded his arms on his chest. And what's wrong with using my great brain to make money? He demanded. You heard your father say yesterday that everybody would be admitted to see the water closet, Mama said. I do not recall your father saying only adults would be admitted free and children would be charged a penny. Now hand me those crayons in your hip pocket. Tom reluctantly handed Mama the box of crayons. Then Mama took the sign away from me. I was horrified when she used a red crayon to draw a line through the words 1 penny and printed the word free instead on the sign. Then she handed the sign back to me. Now, John Dennis, she said to me, let me see you put the same amount of enthusiasm into your barking, as you call it, and ringing the cowbell as you were putting into it a few minutes ago. Well, Papa isn't going to like this one bit, Tom said. Papa says it's brains that count and not muscles. And when he finds out you made me give up a good money-making scheme my great brain thought of, he's going to be mighty angry with you, Mama. You just wait and see. When your father comes home, Mama said, not in the least cowed by Tom's threats, I'll have him explain to you the difference between an honest business transaction and swindling your friends. And now that I think of it, you must have charged admission for letting your friends watch Mr. Harvey dig at the cesspool. Papa didn't say anything about letting anybody watch dig cesspool for nothing, Tom said, and all the customers were completely satisfied. Your customers are going to be more than satisfied, Mama said. Now just march yourself out to the backyard and refund not only all the pennies you collected this morning, but also all the money you collected for letting your friends watch Mr. Harvey dig the cesspool. But Mama, Tom started to protest. You heard me, Tom Dennis, she said, interrupting him. Tom didn't have to wait till Papa came home to learn the difference between an honest business transaction and a swindle. He refunded all the pennies he'd collected for letting the kids watch Mr. Harvey dig the cesspool and the magic water closet. And there were still 20 kids in line waiting for refunds. I followed Tom to the kitchen. Mama, he said in dignity, there are a bunch of cheaters out there. I refunded all the money I collected, and you know what, Mama? What? Mama asked. There's still 20 kids demanding refunds, Tom said with a wave of his hand toward the back porch. Well, that'll teach you a lesson, Mama said, as if she enjoyed seeing her own flesh and blood defrauded. You will just have to take 20 cents out of your bank. Tom's cheeks swelled up in protest, but he knew there was no appeal from one of Mama's decisions. When the last kid had been paid off on the back porch, Tom put his hand on my shoulder. J.D., old partner, he said, we took 20-cent loss on that business venture because some of those kids went to the back of the end of the line and got paid twice. There's no hurry making good on your half of the loss, but it's always best business to settle these things immediately. We will go get that 10 cents you owe me from your bank right now, partner. It didn't sound quite right to me. I needed some expert advice. I'm not handing over 10 cents unless Mama tells me to, I said. Tom put his arm around my shoulder. We've upset Mama enough for one day, he said. Let's just settle this like businessmen and as partners should. We don't have to run to Mama to settle every little thing like this. I guess I would have handed over my 10 cents of the loss if Mama hadn't been in the kitchen when we were entering it to go upstairs to our room to get the money. I explained the whole deal to Mama and asked her to settle it. John D. was only a 10% partner, Mama said to my joy. He is therefore only responsible for 10% of the loss. Tom didn't take the decision lying down. But you said anything that was 1% wrong is just the same as 100%. That makes J.D. a full partner. Mama wasn't swayed by Tom's brilliant defense. I was speaking of morals, she said. Morally, John D. is as guilty as you, but looking at it from a business angle, you would have pocketed 90% of the profits if Aunt Bertha hadn't phoned me. That makes you responsible for 90% of the loss. Tom knew the decision was final. All right, J.D., he said. I'll settle for 2 cents. Just one moment, boys, Mama said. John D. gave you back the 2 cents commission you paid him? He wasn't your partner when Mr. Harvey was digging the cesspool. He was working for you on a straight commission. That makes you two even. It was the first time that my brother's great brain had cost him money. I was positive Tom would carry the scar of his financial catastrophe to his grave. And that'll be the chapter 1. Holy schlarks, a whole hour. Goodbye. Love you. Hope this was fun.